Okay, this video is an outline of the homework I did when I was looking at buying a Land Rover Defender and all the things that a pretty thorough checklist of what you want to look at or look for when purchasing a Land Rover Defender. And you can go in the notes on this video and click the link to the blog so you can print it out. So first thing, run a VIN report, get a history on the vehicle's registration locations. Did it really stay in Florida or Arizona or California, or did it spend some time in New England? That's going to tell you about rust history. Look for any accidents. I've done VIN reports on vehicles as old as the 1980s, and you'd be surprised. You run into telephone poles or whatever. You can find out the number of owners it's had. Find out how long the current owners had possession of the vehicle to see if he was just, maybe flipping it. So beyond that, let's talk about chassis numbers before we get into rust. The chassis number can be found in three places. The first one's under the bonnet. You'll find it right there on the left. And make a note of it because when you look on the chassis itself, on the frame, look under the front right wheel well, stamped right in that corner, you'll find the chassis number. It should be exactly the same as what you found under the bonnet. It's also on the bulkhead as well, right up there on the left-hand side on the bulkhead. So I provide two images here on where you're going to find it. So you want to make sure they all match. Now on the exterior, looking for rust, the bulkhead is very expensive. It's like $6,000 just for the part, and then several thousand more to replace it. These corners on the bulkhead often rot out. Look for uneven surfaces. Run your fingers over them if the rust isn't obvious, because it may have been repainted. Probably has been repainted because these vehicles are 25 years old plus. Also look for rot along the inside. Open the door and look along here, especially around the hinges. Open the wind flaps from the interior, and then from the exterior look in and up to see if you can find rust. Because that bulkhead, if it's got a lot of rust, it's going to go to a whole new level to repair it if you have to replace this bulkhead. A lot of times it's going to make you walk away from the vehicle. Inside the vehicle, look up in the footwell area and see how bad the rust is in there, because you're going to find rust on your Defender. We just need to figure out how bad it is. On the floors as well, peel back the carpet, check the floorboards. On the exterior again, on the bulkhead, right there where you see that hinge on the bottom or right below the hinge, a lot of times it'll be rusted straight through, or you'll find filler. So you can put a magnet on it, or if it's aluminum or steel, you'll get different results obviously with a magnet, but that can help you try to identify filler sometimes. So when you're looking at the frame back where you found the chassis number, I would take a hammer and tap it lightly and listen for a dullness sound, because that's going to indicate rust. So if it's really rusted, you're not going to get that ting. So try that in different areas. Also in the rear, in the corner, tap in there. Make sure you're getting a ting sound. If you're just getting a dull thud, it's rust and probably been repaired. The rear bumper is notorious for rust as well, so lightly tap on the bumper, especially if the owner is watching you, just because you want to make sure you're getting that ting sound everywhere you tap with a hammer. Make sure you tap along the tops of the coilover springs that are welded to the chassis. Make sure they're solid and free of rot. That's what they should look like there. The bulkhead attaches to these right here. Tap all around the front, what's called the outriggers of the frame, to inspect for rust. They rot out as well, and you can replace them. You got to cut them off. It's an expensive labor repair. Check the turrets behind the front wheels for rust as well. And if the vehicle's in pretty good shape, look for oxidation on the aluminum panels, because obviously, if these vehicles are old, if the paint's original, I doubt it. It's probably been repainted once or twice. And look for oxidation, bubbles in the aluminum panels. If there's checker plate on the vehicle, it's probably done to cover up rust. The higher they go with the checker plate, usually implies the worse the rust problem was. If you find it on the bonnet and on the wings, a lot of times it was also done to cover up scratches or dents. It might have been done just for cosmetic, but generally not. Make sure that you stand back from the vehicle and look down, maybe take it to a car wash and clean it, and make sure you identify the scratches and small dents, and really take your time. This whole process should take you over an hour. Check the back door for rot on the interior and exterior because the doors on Defenders are notorious for rotting. You know, they're old. Check along the seam where the top sits on the body because water tends to collect in there and can cause rust as well. Make sure you open and close all doors. Might sound silly, but do they vibrate much? You know, do you have to slam them really hard? You're going to have to slam them anyway, but is that slamming required excessive? You know, and also verify the windows go up and down. Open and close them all with the crank all the way down, all the way up. Do they go up and down easily? If not, that could be something else you have to restore. Check all 5 tires. You know, bring a tire gauge. Check the spare. All right, so let's get into the interior because this is important. You know, you want to make sure you're sitting in a nice vehicle unless you plan on completely restoring the interior anyway. So if there are seat covers in the vehicle, take your time, carefully take them off. Don't take the owner's word for it. Just carefully take the cushion covers off and look at the seats and just be aware of, you know, what they look like. I might even smell them. It might sound kind of weird, but, you know, you're just looking for, you know, damage. Check the condition of the dash and the center console. You know, there are cracks, holes, scratches. You know, and ask yourself, you know, can you live with looking at that crack? You know, because you're going to have to live with some imperfections, and some of these things to replace are just really expensive to replace. You know, spend some time here verifying that all electrical and mechanical systems work. And I mean everything, you know, the horn, blinkers, interior and exterior blinkers, the indicators, the heat, let it warm up. Are you getting good heat? Dash lights, brake lights, parking lights, headlights. Does the radio work? Are you getting good reception compared to your own radio? Because sometimes they put in aftermarket headlights and they'll interfere with radio reception. I've seen that in a few different vehicles. Run the windshield wipers high and low and intermittently. Check the interior cab light, the cigarette lighter. You know, plug your mobile phone in it or whatever. Look at the backup lights. Make sure everything works, guys. You don't want to find out that stuff is, you know, something you're going to have to repair afterwards. Now, on the undercarriage, you know, put that vehicle up on a lift if you can. Otherwise, you got to crawl underneath there. Verify that the gas tank is properly mounted to the chassis. It could be, you know, it should be rubber mounted, and no bolts should be missing. You know, a lot of times they put these things back together and they miss a bolt and they're like, it's good enough. And it might be good enough, but you at least want to be aware of it, how it's been treated in the past. Look for dripping oil around the motor and transmission. You know, push and pull on each front tire to, you know, verify the ball joints in the front are good. Spin the tires, listen for problems with wheel bearings. Follow the brake lines, make sure they're properly mounted and there's no pinches on them. Follow the exhaust and look at all the welds. You know, that's telltale sign of repairs on the exhaust if you're seeing weird welds in places. Look for missing bolts from things like the bell housing. Inspecting the steering track rods and drag rods. You know, are they loose or are they bent from off-roading? Check out the side steps. You know, how bad is the rust? Do they probably have rust? Do they need to be replaced? Take a look at the swivel balls on the front axles. You know, they should be weeping a little bit of oil, but they shouldn't be leaking. Look for dents in the front axle casing. You know, that's a lot of times where they hit or bottom out when they're off-roading. You know, make sure the steering box is dry, not leaking. You know, if the vehicle's been lifted, make sure the flexible hoses were installed, you know, where necessary so that we can put it up on a lift or, you know, they don't pull apart. You know, grab the drive shaft and, you know, try to twist it back and forth, push it up and down. You know, make sure there's no play in the differential pinion bearing. Check the trailing arm brackets for damage. And if you don't know what these things are, bring someone with you, pay them who does know what these things are, and keep a list of the condition of each one of them. And that way you can figure out roughly what it's going to cost you, to fix certain things. Verify the integrity of the anti-roll bar underneath it in the rear. I've seen Defenders with these missing. They take them off. So be aware of that. Okay, let's go on to the bonnet. The Defenders, you probably know, had 5 different motors. And basically, there are different ways to identify those motors. If it's a diesel, when you're driving down the road and it's warmed up, look at the exhaust. Is it blue? If it is, that's not good. Or if it's white, you want, black smoke is normal. Take it for a test drive. If it's a running vehicle, make sure that when you're going down the road, let go of the handlebars, yeah. Let go of the steering wheel just for a moment. See if it pulls to the left and right. Could have alignment issues. Hit the brakes. Does it pull left or right? You may have to adjust the braking. Take this, turn sharply. It should be real smooth on turns. Listen for any whirls or strange noises when you're driving it. And then, once it's warmed up and you took it for a test drive, just stop and listen to the motor idling at stop. Push the clutch in, let it out, listen for anything strange. So you're going to find problems, possibly a lot of problems. And, that shouldn't stop you from necessarily buying it. But your list of stuff that you're going to have to address will help you figure out what it's going to cost you to fix. And, labor, is going to be really expensive. Do you have a 10K budget to fix it up or a 100K budget? But don't go into a Defender with a zero budget, Even if the vehicle costs $150,000 and claims to be in mint condition, you're going to have problems with it, guys. I can tell you from owning, FJ40s, old Mercedes G-Wagons, even if they're restored, which I've done that and paid close to 100 grand. You're going to have problems with locks that weren't properly restored. You're going to have problems with bolts that weren't tightened down, even though the engine looks mint, completely restored. So, because your vehicle was custom restored possibly by a small team, and it doesn't go through like this rigorous process of manufacturing tests. So stuff breaks on old restored vehicles regularly. And also go into buying a Land Rover Defender well aware of why you're buying it, because no one buys these things because they're great, reliable vehicles. They buy it to look cool and to be accepted into a culture that would rather ride around in a piece of crap than a Jeep Wrangler. Not that all Defenders are pieces of crap, because they're definitely not. They're awesome. But the novelty of owning that vehicle will largely wear off, especially if you can't afford to accept that you have to dump thousands of dollars into a used vehicle, and you're doing it all for vanity, because chances are maybe you're not off-roading with it. You just want to have a cool weekend vehicle. So, and wanting to look cool, I think is important, because I own like 3 different 4x4s, and not being aware of what it's going to cost you sucks. And it'll leave you feeling angry, taken advantage of, maybe a little bit depressed. And you just want to avoid that. So if you're really dead set on a Defender, check out a Jeep Wrangler with a Defender front end. It's a conversion that I've done, and it looks like a Defender from the front and rear. It has all the modern conveniences of a Jeep Wrangler, and it costs tens of thousands less. So go to appanon.com to check it out, and I hope this video helped you a great deal. Thanks. Bye.